So we are going to be factoring today. So what we have to review are perfect square trinomials, okay? So let's pick one of these four equations to do, or not equations, expressions to do. Which one would you guys like me to do? All right, I'll do the bottom right one. So what I need to do is find two numbers that'll multiply to give me 64 and add to give me 16. 8 and 8. So that means, guys, I would have x plus 8 times x plus 8 are my factors. However, how can I write this? Exactly. So this would be my answer, x plus 8 squared. That's why we call these perfect squares, because the factors, you can just write it one time and put a squared on it. Okay, so these are called perfect squares. So I'm going to let you guys do the other three. You're going to get the same number twice, the same factors twice. So now that we reviewed what perfect square trinomials are, we're going to use these in order to solve a quadratic equation. Okay, so let's try to do this one. What example would you guys like me to do? Number 1 or number 2? Number 2. All right, let's do number 2. So first, let's go ahead and do an eye chart. So I need two numbers that are going to multiply to give me 9, but combine to give me -6. Thank you. -3 times -3 is 9. And if you add them together, you'll get -6. So that means my factors are x minus 3 and x minus 3, but I can just write it as a squared. So we factored the left side of the equation. The right side is still 20. And we're going to be solving these by factoring, which we just did, and then we're going to use the square root property. So guys, I'm going to take the square root of both sides in order to solve. So I'm going to take the square root of this side and the square root of this side. And the square root cancels out with the squared. So I am left with x minus 3 equals the square root of 20. And we can simplify the square root of 20. So two numbers that multiply to give me 20 are 4 and 5. So I know that 4 times 5 is 20. So I can write this as x minus 3 equals the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. And guys, what's the square root of 4? Yes, so that means my answer will be x minus 3 equals plus or minus 2 square root of 5. And we're almost done. We just need to get this x by itself. Yep, we're going to add 3 to both sides. So I'm just going to cross that out and add 3 to here. So that is my final answer. X equals plus or minus 2 square roots of 5 plus 3. That is my answer. All right, so you guys can do number 1, similar process as number 2. Now, let's look at a scenario where I do not have a perfect square. If I tried to do my little eye chart here and I wanted two numbers to give me -34 but add to 8, I won't get the same number twice, right? I won't get 5 and 5 or 6 and 6, 7 and 7. I won't get that here. So if I don't get a perfect square, this is the steps that I'm going to take. I'm going to complete the square, and these are the steps. First, I'm going to rewrite this equation to look like this. So guys, if I rewrite it to look like step number 1, what will it look like? Yep. We'll just move the 34 to the other side and make it positive. So this will be x squared plus 8x equals 34. That is the first step. We rewrote it. Step 2, it says divide both sides by a. Guys, do I have an a value? What's my a value in this scenario? 1. So I don't really have to divide everything by 1. It'll just remain the same. Let's move on to step 3. Take half of b square it, then add this to both sides of the equation. So this is my b value right here. So half of 8 is 4, and then 4 squared. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add that to both sides of the equation. So what this will look like, I'm going to add that to this side and add that to this side. We took half of 8 and squared it. Now notice, this doesn't really change the equation, it's still balanced. We added a 16 to one side and a 16 to the other side. Now, let's go ahead and factor the left-hand side. Notice why this works out so perfectly now. I need two numbers that multiply to give me 16 and add to 8. What are they? 4 and 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 plus 4 is 8. So I get my perfect square over here. I'll get x plus 4 squared on this side. And then I can just add this side together. 34 and 16 together is 50. And then we'll just solve like we're used to doing. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So square root this side and square root this side. Yes. So we'll get x plus 4 equals the square root of 50. I can break this into the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. Because 25 times 2 is 50. So the square root of 25 is 5. So I'll have plus or minus 5 square root of 2 on this side. And then my last step would just be to subtract 4. So cross out that 4, put a minus 4. So you can write your answer like this. You can also write the minus 4 in the front, or the negative 4 in the front, plus or minus 5 square root of 2. You can write it either way. They're both correct. All right. Any questions on this, guys? All right. How did I get this? 5 square root of 2? Okay. All right, next one. I'm going to do an example for you guys. Should I see your paper? How about we try a complex solution one? So I can do either 11, 12, 13, or 14. I'll do number 13. Okay, so number 13. Luke, can you read that for me, please?
Man, 4x squared plus 76 equals 16x.
Thank you. All right, so first we got to put it in the correct format. I need a and b on this side, so it'll be 4x squared. Move the 16 to this side, so it'll be a minus 16x. Move the 76 to this side, so it'll be a negative 76. So that is what you need to do first. Rearrange it. Step 2. I need to divide everything by the a value. So I need to divide everything by 4. And guys, go ahead and work ahead of me. What is 76 divided by 4?
19.
Is it 19?
No.
Y'all have calculators. Is it 19?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we divided everything by 4. Okay, now our next step. We're going to take half of the b value and square it. So guys, what's half of negative 4? Half of negative 4 is negative 2, and then square it. What will that be? 4. Okay, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I'll have x squared minus 4x. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 4 to both sides. And my side note here is you take half of the b value and then you square it. So what we did was b was negative 4 we took half of it and then we squared it. So this was -2, and then we squared it and got 4. This is just a little side note. All right, so we add 4 to both sides. All right, now we're going to go ahead and factor. So I need 2 numbers that will multiply to give me 4, but combine to give me -4. Yes, -2, -2. -2 times -2 is a +4, but if you add them, you'll get -4. So that means this side is a perfect square. It'll be x minus 2 squared. -19 plus 4 is -15. Thank you. All right, and the most we can break down 15 would be like 3 and 5, which we can't do that. All right, so we'll just keep it like -15. All right, so I'm going to square root both sides. The square root cancels out with the squared. So now I am left with x minus 2 equals the square root of -15, which I can write this as -1 times the square root of 15. Yes. And if we remember, the square root of -1 is I. So I'm going to write that over here. The square root of -1 is equal to I. So this will be x minus 2 equals plus or minus I square root 15. And then last step would just be to add 2 to both sides. Add 2. So your final answer, you can write it like this. X equals 2 plus or minus I square root 15. Yes. We need to see that I there because we want to simplify your answers. So the square root of -1 is I. So don't leave it as next square root of -15. Always put that I there. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to end here. Okay, so I just wanted to go over this one. I'm getting a lot of questions on it. So the first step is we're going to divide everything by 4. So what we're going to get is x squared minus 2x equals -3/4. Okay, now we're going to move on to step 3, which is, we're going to move on to step 3, which is doing half of this number and then squaring it. So half of -2 is -1, and when you square it, it'll be a +1. So we'll have x squared minus 2x plus 1 and a +1 on this side. So I need 2 numbers that'll multiply to give me 1, but combine to give me -2. What would that be? -1 and -1, perfect. So that means this side I can write it as x minus 1 squared. And then this part right here, I need to make this denominator the same. So I'm going to write this 1 as 4/4. Okay, so now I can combine these. -3/4 plus 4/4 is 1/4. So this will be 1/4. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do the square root of both sides. And let me explain this part real quick. I had -3/4 plus 1. In order to get the denominator the same, I multiplied the denominator by 4 and multiply the numerator by 4. That's how I got 4/4 right here. Okay, and then you combine, get 1/4. All right, now let's go ahead and square root both sides. So I get x minus 1 equals, what's the square root of 1? 1. And what's the square root of 4? So I get plus and minus a half. And then I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Okay, so guys, I'm going to get 2 answers here. My first answer will be x equals a half plus 1. And my other answer is this one. You get a plus answer and you get a negative answer. So I can do negative a half plus 1. You're going to get 2 different answers. So this top one will be 3 halves, or 1.5, however you want to write it. And then this one will be a half, or 0.5. Does that make sense, guys? You get 2 answers. Because whenever you do the square root, you get a plus and a minus. Yes.
Wait, you can't do one. Oh.
What's your question one more time?
I can't not put it on.
Oh, like this? Just box it? You can. On the test, though, you might see something like this. Check all the correct answers, and it might be 1 half, 3 halves, negative 1 half, and you'll have to check what the correct answers are. It won't be combined into one. But yes, you could theoretically, yeah, you could just leave it like that. But no, I wouldn't leave it like that because these are full numbers. In the previous examples that we did, we had like these square roots in your answers to where you can't really combine it. But here where you can, when you just have rational numbers, you can combine it. Yeah, so I would. Good question. Any other questions, guys? All right. Some of them will be less complicated. Like sometimes you might get plus or minus 2 plus 5. So then your answer would be 2 plus 5, which is 7. And then negative 2 plus 5, which is 3. So sometimes you just might get, you wouldn't just keep it like this, you would separate it out. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause it here.